I have responsibility for the technologies curriculum area, obviously computing science being one of those areas. And you will be aware of the different aspects that we are looking at as part of the curriculum improvement cycle. And this is a pilot. We've been running pilots for around about 6 months to 8 months in some other subject areas. And this first workshop is specifically about examining the evidence that we have out there, the why for our subject area, the why for computing science. As I say, we're really happy to have you all here. It's a great opportunity to get so many of you around the table. What you should notice in your tables is that you'll have a mix of sectors. So you should have somebody from early years, primary, secondary, possibly college, university, industry. There's a real mix of people in the room, which I think is really important for these discussions, particularly that why. Outline for today, we've kind of done a bit of that already. 11:30 comfort break, but please feel free to depart at any time if you need to. We've got two provocation sessions. This is something that we've worked on with some of the other areas as part of the pilots, and it's a really useful time to share that evidence and hear from people with different perspectives and to make you think about the why for your subject area and for computing science. Some kind of things that we always like to talk about here. As I say, there's a diverse range of people in here, and the voices, we want to hear everybody's voice. They are big groups, we're aware of that. So we've got some online solutions to that, as well as some paper solutions. You should have a facilitator at your table. Facilitators, pop your hands up, and then we'll know if we're not. What table are you, Martin? Right, so we'll sort that out. We'll sort that out. So facilitators at the table who will just keep the conversation going, make sure you're on track with the workshop activities that we're doing in that space as well. But we're really keen to hear from everyone. We're also going to share presentations and share opportunities for people who are not here to get in on the conversation as well electronically. So that's something that will be happening as we move on as well. So it's not a big workshop if you're not having to do a connector or a icebreaker at the beginning of a session. So just take a bit of time to get to know the people around your table. To know, oh dear, that's a much karaoke time. So in 3s or 4s, depending on how many people are at your table, take about 5 minutes. Find something that you all have in common. What's your ideal holiday? Just have a discussion with each other, and what's your best educational experience? We'll give you about 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, and you'll be back after that to give you a wee opportunity to meet everyone at your table. Thank you very much.
Recommendations, for example, for qualifications and the senior phase, hence setting up Professor Hayward's group. There were also some other significant recommendations, and in particular 2 that affect why we're here today. One key recommendation was the need to set up a systematic cycle of reviewing and updating the curriculum. It's something I think historically we've not done as an education system. We've usually waited until external reports, like the OECD report, came along before we instituted change. So that was a significant recommendation. In the aftermath of the OECD report, we've had a number of other reports, reviews. So we had Ken Muir's report, we had the national discussion, we had Louise Hayward's report. The number, and just on that slide there, gives you an indication about the amount of information, consultation, and so on that's been held. Back in June 2023, we had the publication of these reports, and as part of that publication, they also identified the need to review in a systematic process the curriculum, so effectively reviewing and updating on a regular basis, which is probably highly relevant. I'm not a computing specialist, what the studies was my background, but given the pace of technological change and other changes, economic, social changes, there is a definite need to review and update the curriculum on a systematic basis. Also though, the national discussion flagged up, and I'm going to come back to this, a recommendation about reviewing the technical framework of the curriculum. So just flag this up just now, but I will come back in a bit more detail to what that means and what the implications of that are. Also back when those reports were released, we also completed some work on trying to identify and create what that systematic process would look like. This was co-designed with practitioners. We had representatives across all subject areas, all sectors, across local authorities, a group of about 70 people who met on 4 or 5 occasions to look at what would a systematic cycle look like. We also reviewed how other countries carry out the process, particularly high-performing countries. We looked at some of the countries highlighted there, there were 10 in total. We looked at what their review process focused on. So, for example, methodology, what the curriculum emphasised, the role of different agencies in it, and the type of outputs that were generated. We also considered who was involved. It was actually quite enlightening that, for example, in one country, we just didn't involve teachers at all in the process. It was effectively led by the Ministry of Education in that country. We looked at how they carried out the process, and there was a lot of common features built around, if you like, these 4 stages that we identified. And you heard Kirsty talking about earlier about the analyse evidence, and that was one of the stages. This led to the proposal that was presented to the Cabinet Secretary for a 4-stage model, which really focused on what's the evidence telling us from different sources. So what are teachers telling us? What are stakeholders telling us? What's the data telling us? What are international comparisons telling us? What's PISA telling us? To identify what are the issues. Then moving into a 2nd stage, which if you like is the co-design stage, where we're really looking at, okay, we've identified issues, what needs to change. Then moving into a 3rd stage, and then all the feedback that we had from teachers involved, they identified this as the most important stage, which was, if we're looking at something new, we have to prepare the system for implementation. We have to consider resources, we have to consider professional learning. I think there was around at the time, with implementation of CFE, we produced these nice shiny green folders, but did we actually produce enough focusing on how we implement? And I think at the time, again, there's a financial crisis and so on, that may be factored into that. Cuts in local authority staff, central staff and so on. I think they all contributed to possibly some of the issues that we've experienced. And then a final stage, after preparing for implementation, which is really, we implement, we monitor and evaluate. And then at the end of that, we'll go back to the 1st stage again on, if you like, a 10-year cycle. So that's the general sort of gist of the process. Another important recommendation, and this is pretty central to why we're here today, which is a recommendation about position of knowledge within the curriculum. The OECD recommended that we consider the position of knowledge and look at what actually might be the common base of knowledge that we would expect learners to have as they moved, particularly at key points in transition. So, for example, from primary to secondary, or from the BGE into the senior phase. And this led to the establishment of what was a series of pilot curriculum reviews. This is an example of slightly different, because the pilot curriculum reviews that we have run since February 2023 up until March 2024 have been focused on curriculum areas. So we're doing something slightly different here. And the reason is to test out and explore some reactions and also get a sense of, are there some specific issues, given what I said earlier about, for example, the pace of technological change. There are 2 key processes behind what we were doing with the pilots. We ran them initially in maths, health and wellbeing and social subjects in the 1st phase, and in the 2nd phase we were focused on modern languages, expressive arts and English. We had intended to move into technologies and so on, but the Cabinet Secretary then announced a proposal for a formal cycle of what is now called the Curriculum Improvement Cycle, which is really reviewing and updating the curriculum. With 2 clear purposes: focus on processes. How do we actually carry out the process of reviewing and updating the curriculum? That included who should be involved, how we should recruit people, how we should engage, for example, face-to-face or online, and also looking at the types of activities and methodologies that we use in the process. The second purpose was to explore the position of knowledge. What should learners know? What do learners need to know as part of a future-oriented curriculum? But I also explored, probably most significantly, what are the key messages that are coming back regarding the current curriculum framework. And as I'll outline in a second, there were some very strong, consistent messages. Regarding the process of reviewing the curriculum, we found during the course of the pilots and we're talking about engagement of probably over 1,000 teachers at various different meetings, that there was very, very high levels of motivation, engagement and enthusiasm. I think practitioners, teachers valued the opportunity to get out, to get some headspace, to discuss with colleagues, across different sectors, and to discuss with other stakeholders. We found that the best way to recruit was an open recruitment process. We trialled different approaches. The approach in maths was different to in social subjects, which was different in health and wellbeing, and that shaped what we did there. And it was really an open recruitment process was the preferred option, going out and advertising, but also ensuring that we topped that up to ensure representation. Because when we tried that at first for health and wellbeing, we found lack of primary teachers, lack of early years, so we had to go out and recruit and target those. We found there was an optimal level of need or ratio between teachers and stakeholders, which roughly was a sort of 3-to-1, so 70%, 30, 75%, 25%, to get a range of perspectives. In-person engagement was viewed as essential. We trialled in social subjects online, didn't work. Okay, you need opportunities for people to speak, engage face-to-face, one of the reasons that you're here today. We identified approaches centred around evidence-based, and you're going to hear some provocations right after my input, which are going to be providing you with some evidence. What are stakeholders, what are academics identifying are some of the key issues for you to consider. Also, service design approaches. We'll be using some approaches today that have been tested out, trialled out. We found that some are particularly effective in generating, and it's really a case today of generating as much information as possible, either through the links with the QR codes or through the post-it notes in your flip chart paper. We take all this information in to analyse it, and then what has normally happened is we've operated on a big group, which is like this group, and then recruiting a smaller group from within this group to do more intensive work, i.e. what the message is telling us, where do we go, what do we need to do. And that's the process that we're now following for the formal curriculum improvement cycle. So a couple of weeks ago, and there's a couple of members of the maths team, we were in here with the National Maths Group, and they were getting feedback from the smaller, what we call core group, who've been doing work on a number of aspects as a part of the formal curriculum improvement cycle. We identified a number of challenges. One of the key challenges, and I say it from the point of view as a former timetabler, was getting people out of school. And the difficulties, in particular difficulties for certain groups of practitioners to get out of school. So we've tried to work on the basis of trying to overcome as far as possible, particularly for that core group who needs to meet more frequently. We also have looked at trying to ensure ways for people who can't be in the room to engage with the process. You might not be aware, it might be, but there's a website now set up with information on the curriculum improvement cycle, what's happening, information will come out from meetings of groups, key messages and so on, and there'll be opportunities for people to consult via that online option. There are some key messages that came out consistently across the pilots that we held. I'm going to start maybe counterintuitively up in the top right corner and work anti-clockwise. One key message was the desire to declutter the curriculum, to focus on greater depth of learning. It's a factor or a feature of high-performance systems. It came up in the very first day, of the very first pilot in maths. And when we engaged with teachers, there was a lot of ideas about what needed to go in to update the curriculum, but a lack of consensus of what needed to come out. Because if you're going to declutter the curriculum, it does mean, for want of better words, taking stuff out. So therefore, we need some parameters for that. Secondly, there was a series of what I've called structural issues and challenges that were identified, often linked to the ESOs, the framing of them, the vagueness of them, open to various interpretations, the framing as I can statements. There were issues linked to transition from primary to secondary. So for example, if decisions are made on the curriculum and there's autonomy at school level, what we found out was when you got kids moving from their feeder primaries up to secondary, they were coming with a wide variation in their knowledge base. And then what were secondary schools doing in response? Starting again. Other issues, disconnect between the BGA and the senior phase. We've effectively got two frameworks that don't talk to each other. And where they do talk to each other, they're often using the same terms to mean different things, i.e. moderation. And then other factors such as processes that are viewed as onerous and ineffective, for example, moderation, tracking model, and so on. And these messages came out consistently across the original pilots, the series of pilots that we have. There were other issues, such as lack of clarity over knowledge and what knowledge learners need at key points in their learning, particularly at transition. The position of cross-curricular areas was viewed as being ineffective, inconsistent, and in some cases incoherent. A message that came out frequently regarding the responsibilities involved was responsibility eroded. So we need to review and look at and reframe and redefine the relationship between cross-curricular areas and curriculum areas. Generally, I think what teachers were saying is we need greater clarity about what learners need to know, but we do not want over-specification. That came out quite strongly. I think what teachers have said to us over the course of all the pilots is we want to be able to design, develop and organise the curriculum based on the learners that are in front of us and the communities that we serve. Now that chimed with me. I worked in Dundee for 30 odd years and I moved here 2 years ago and worked in 2 schools that were 5 miles apart but were worlds apart. And if I delivered the same curriculum in both schools, then I think I'd be meeting the needs of a group of learners in one of the 2 schools. We also need to, I think, design something that meets the needs of different subjects. The structure of knowledge, for example, in maths and science, is probably going to be different to areas like expressive arts and languages. And what came out with discussions, because we considered how do we resolve these issues, was a willingness from teachers to reconsider that phrase that I mentioned earlier, which was the technical framework. By the technical framework, what we mean is what teachers use for planning and organising the curriculum. So E's and O's, national guidance, effectively core specifications, processes and guidance around things like, for example, moderation and so on. So there was a message there that I think people were saying, we have tried over the years, I think, to put sticking plasters on things. Those sticking plasters are added additional levels of guidance documentation. So we've got to a point where there's too much documentation, it's too complex, and in some cases, it's actually created new incoherences. And I think there was a general feeling that came out of the pilots so far. It's the curriculum improvement process as an opportunity to rectify some of these issues and to address some of these issues. So we are not putting sticking plasters on, we're actually got an opportunity now to address some things that, as I said earlier, could be seen as structural issues. Since then, we've had the announcement from the Cabinet Secretary regarding a formal curriculum improvement cycle. Maths and English have already started. Health and Wellbeing and Science are starting formally. Science will have their first meeting on Thursday of their big group, their formal big group in the Crown Plaza along the road. And then over the course of the rest of this academic year, all the other areas will enter formally this curriculum improvement cycle process. At the same time, we've also been carrying out work because cross-curricular areas are identified on exploring these cross-curricular areas and what that relationship could or should look like. Kirsty and her team have been leading the work on digital literacy and have been involved in some of the other pieces of work that have been going on, and that is starting to, if you like, give us the parameters for what a redefinition of that relationship should look like. Another aspect, and I mentioned it earlier, is about the significance of bringing in different perspectives into this. And as Brian said earlier, we need your input. We need your input on the tasks, we need your input on the links that the QR codes will take you to. Because the more perspectives that we've got on this, the more we've got to work with, the more you've got to work with potentially as we enter a period where we could be redesigning the curriculum. You might be aware, might not be aware, that the learning that came from the pilot curriculum reviews was published a week last Thursday. It's It's got a lot of information. It's got the background to what we were doing and why. It's got the learning about processes. It also has the information about some of those key messages that I have outlined. We will also be publishing, probably in about 3 weeks' time, it's going through proofreading just now, another document. The first document really focused on the case for change, in particular, the case for changing the technical framework. The second document will outline what a revised technical framework could be like, which addresses some issues such as disconnecting the VGA in the senior phase, which is looking at a potential different model that will span the VGA in the senior phase, that is looking to address some of these potential issues. And some of the work that you're doing today will feed into what we develop as part of this alternative technical framework. We met with the Cabinet Secretary last June. She sanctioned, as part of the curriculum improvement process, the technical framework. These are those core specs, other guidance documentation was up for change, for want of a better word, and what we are effectively doing during the course of the full curriculum improvement work and the pilots, as we continue with pilots in modern languages and expressive arts. So, for example, next week for modern languages, smaller groups meeting in Dundee, because we're exploring in more detail, and we also want to explore what are the implications for specific curriculum areas and subjects. And I think your area, there are some specific implications related to the pace of technological change. We also need to have some flexibility in relation to how often, probably your area, needs to be reviewed to recognise that. So there is provision within the proposal for that systematic cycle for some areas to, if you like, have more frequent reviews to update their curriculum. Changing the technical framework does not mean changing CFE. There's been strong support throughout the pilots and from other engagement work and from external reports like the OECD about effectively the key ambitions of CFE, which is the 4 capacities. So what we're trying to do is do more than just have learners leaving school knowing stuff about their holistic development. What we are looking at, if you like, is that bit in the middle there, which is the what. What do we cover in the curriculum? How do we do it? And how does that better realise the ambitions of CFE? During the course of today, you'll be using some service design approaches. You're effectively going to be exploring things. That exploration will help define some of the key issues, challenges, and direction of travel. That as we progress with this process, that will then start shaping and exemplifying change. From the experience of the other pilots, and particularly if you've been involved in the core competency work, this is a messy process. It is not linear. It means iteration, backwards, moving, changing, rethinking things. And I think the key thing is trusting the process that we've got behind us, because we think it works. The feedback that we've had from the other pilots, from the full curriculum improvement cycle work, from the core competencies work, is that it's producing results. And we just like it and encourage you to engage as much as possible with this. Over the course of today, I think you're going to be focusing on examining the evidence. You're going to be hearing provocations from stakeholders, partners. There's an opportunity to engage and think, what does this mean for us from those provocations? And then start to look at, okay, what knowledge, skills, attributes are we looking to develop in the curriculum? So that's effectively covered my input. And I'll pass you over to Kirsty to organise the rest of the day.
Kirsty for having me. As Kirsty says, I'm Karen Meakin. I'm the CEO of ScotlandIS, and we are the trade body and cluster management organisation for Scotland's digital and tech sector. So we have around 1,200 companies within our membership. We range from very small startup tech companies to the big multinationals of IBM, Microsoft, BT, and everything in between. Now, for us, our role is to help support and grow the tech ecosystem in Scotland. But to enable us to do that, we have a challenge with skills. Now, we have had a skills gap in our sector since 2004, when we were highlighted that our universities were educating lots of international students who were then taking that skill set home. And we didn't have enough Scottish students in Scotland with the skill set that the sector needed. On top of that, we have a huge digital transformation that happened during COVID, where technology has gone over the last 20 years has been huge. We're now competing with the likes of the Whisky Society for a software engineer. That was never the case 15 years ago. But because everything is digital, the skills gap continues to grow. The sector continues to grow. The need continues to grow. So there's lots of things that we've done. There's lots of things that lots of people are doing in the sector to try and help create that talent pipeline that industry need to grow. There's a couple of things. We do an annual survey every year of the sector, almost like a health check of Scotland's tech ecosystem to see where we are, what they need, what the challenges are. And skills is always, always part of that research. So we're just about to do another survey for next year, but some of the stats from last year. So to give you a bit of an idea, 70% of our members were looking to recruit this year. 24% of them were looking to recruit modern apprentices. 62% are looking to recruit university graduates. 34% are looking at graduate apprentices. The skill sets that are most in demand are AI and machine learning. And I know we're looking at what are the skill sets going to be required for industry in the next 2, 3, 5 years. There's a piece of work being done by the AI Alliance on what are the skill sets required to work in AI or work with AI and Gen AI, and how do we define that a bit more. And they say the AI Alliance is doing that just now. So hopefully they come back with a better understanding of what are the specific skill sets. Because when we looked a couple of years ago, we spoke lots around green skills, which confused everyone. Because actually the skills are the same. It's software engineers, it's developers, it's data specialists who are creating solutions, green solutions. And that's the difference. So we're mixing up the need for the skills. So we're making people assume that it's a whole other skill set they need, when actually it's not. It's the same skill set, they're just working on different solutions. So AI and machine learning, 64% of the sector are looking for those skills. Data, 69% of our sector are looking for data skills. Software and web development, 61% of our sector, and cyber is 66%. So when you look at the array of requirements from the sector to get into industry, to hit the ground running, that's the kind of skills they're looking for. 42% of our industry, though, did say that they would look to take on work experience. So I know, and there's been a number of parents and schools have reached out to ScotlandIS to try and find work experience for the week, for their third year, fourth year, whatever it is in industry. It's difficult for industry to do that because we have such a skills gap, because everyone is so busy, because of our remote working. That all causes challenges, certainly for our sector. But there are businesses out there who are looking to engage our young people in their business to help them see what a career in tech would look like. The specific skills or languages that we're looking at, certainly from a junior level, but actually across the piece, is Python, Java, and JavaScript. So those are the most desired skills that industry are looking for, or we're looking for this year. And we will look again, as we say, we're out with our survey in the next couple of weeks, so that will be updated in March time. There's a couple of things that we've done and the industry are doing to try and engage education, trying to encourage our young people into the tech sector. So we have a Digital Critical Friends programme where we bring in industry practitioners, so your software engineers, your data scientists, your cyber experts, into schools to work with teachers to support you, to bring to life what a career in this sector really looks like. So what does a software engineer do? How do I get into that role? Do I need to go to university? Are there other pathways? If I love psychology or art, where does that fit in the tech sector? How can we join those dots for them? So there is a resource and a support for our teachers. We appreciate the workload that you have. This is an industry challenge. We want more of your kids out and into our sector. So the industry are looking to support however they can. So if anyone's interested in a digital critical friend, please get my details from Kirsty. We'll certainly match you up with an industry expert on that. We also run a e-Placement Scotland programme. So we've run this for 16 years. And ultimately what we were looking to do was, because we had such a skills gap, because our SMEs were struggling to secure the talent that were coming out of colleges and more likely universities, they were all being hoovered up by Amazon, by JP Morgan, by Morgan Stanley. So we've created this placement programme that allows students in Scottish universities to get paid work experience within the sector for up to 3 and 12 months. Now, what that's done is that's opened up our SMEs to some of this new talent that they weren't getting access to because we're being hoovered up by the big guys. But also it gives our students some work experience on what it's like to work in the sector. Because the vast majority of them have come from school straight to university. They've done part-time work throughout university, but it won't have been in the tech sector. So again, we're just trying to give them a bit of experience, a bit of knowledge, a bit of understanding of what is expected from them. The graduate apprenticeship programme is very popular in the sector just now. One of our members, I think, has had 24 graduate apprentices. All have stayed, all bar one, I think, finished with a first. 3 have been promoted on graduation. So it's making sure that we are making them aware of the various pathways into the sector. We want them in. What we don't have time to do is take them direct from school and upskill them. We need them to have some of that knowledge and that understanding to be able to hit the ground running at least part way so that they can contribute to what the businesses are doing. Because as I say, we create over 15,000 jobs a year in digital. We have something like 5,000 graduates from university across Scotland. They don't all stay. They don't all come into the sector. So you can see the challenge that we have. Now, back in 2004, we had 5,000 jobs of a skills gap. So, you can see all the work that Education Scotland, that we're doing, that various other organisations are doing to help plug that skills gap. Although it has helped, the requirement has grown, so we are constantly playing catch up. There is some work being done, because I know we're looking at what are the skills required, as I say, in the next 5 years. Some work being done with CivTech at Scottish Government. There's a challenge out there. It's for Glasgow specifically, but if successful, there's no reason why that can't be rolled out, to look at what are the skills required in Glasgow over the next 5 to 10 years, so that then our education institutions can then look at what do we need to start teaching to enable our young people or our students to come out of school, college, university and into the sector. As I say, for us, we've done lots. We created CodeClan, which was the first and only coding academy in Scotland. We're disappointed that it is no more, because it was a fantastic initiative. But it was how do we get people into the sector quickly with enough skill set to make a difference, and then continue to grow that skill set whilst they're in education. We've got Digital Extra Fund, which is a charity that is supported by industry to give extracurricular coding activity to kids across the whole of Scotland, regardless of their location or their economic background. So there is lots of great work happening, and if you're not engaged with some of these organisations and some of this work, then we're happy to put you in touch with them. But as I say, for us, for industry, we need as many people as you can give us into the sector, because we can't continue to grow Scotland's tech businesses if we don't have the staff. And if we don't have the staff, we're stopping these businesses from growing. It stops the economy from growing. If we can grow Scotland's tech ecosystem, That's more money into the public purse, that's more services that we provide, it's more funding for our education system. But we need to hear from you on how best is it that industry engages so that we're giving you the right information for you to be able to educate our young people and then convince them into our sector. And that's me. I hope I've not scared anybody. It's a bit scary, but the requirement won't stop. We will continue to need people, and we absolutely need to work with all of our education system to make sure that we have the people coming out of our schools, colleges and universities into the sector. Please.
We do have a few minutes. Does anyone have a question for Karen? Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Yep. Yep. So we've lobbied government on that because I know that after the pandemic, I think universities lost another 1,200 places. So it had gone up by 1,200 places across the universities during COVID. And then we lost that. The challenge for us, and we've spoken to Scottish Government about this, is exactly what you say. When we look at the funding that has been reduced across our colleges and our universities, that means as an institution you need to look at international students because you have a business to run. So if you're looking at international students, you're not taking in Scottish students, which again means after 2 years, once they've graduated, can stay for 2 years and work. Then they need to find a sponsor. So typically those students go back home. So that hasn't been. Yep. 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 And as I say, we're lobbying Scottish Government. We're speaking to the Migration Advisory Group at UK level. But this is a challenge for us as a sector, and if the government have such a focus on the tech sector in Scotland, these are some of the big key ticket areas that they need to help us solve. We need more graduates to come out, we need them in the sector. And then if we've got international students who are in, then they're only here for 2 years, like I said, and then we need to find someone to sponsor them. And if that's an SME, that's not going to happen because the red tape and the expense of that is not doable. But that's the companies that we want to grow. We want them to grow from a £5 million business to 10 to 50, 50 to 100. That's how we get the economy to grow and the sector to grow.
That's really interesting to hear that. I think most of us here are teachers and maybe don't understand perhaps that stuff that happens at that level. There's maybe time for one more quick question. Charlie, if you had your hand up.
I think the economic case for investing in computer science is very clear, and it's also clear that to get the workforce of tomorrow, we need to invest in the experience of the young people in Scotland.
Yep.
So they see that as a viable pathway for the future. So I'm really interested about how Scottish Government, I guess, and partners can actually directly support that experience in school and classrooms. We have teachers that haven't had that investment in professional learning. We're struggling to attract teachers into the subject.
Yep.
We've got computer science labs, and I'm not a computer science teacher anymore in my role. I work in our schools, and I see what staff are dealing with in terms of the resources and support in the classroom. There are equipment, teaching computer science that's sniper or 10-year-old equipment.
Yep.
So those are real key challenges. And if a young person experience computer science, despite our best efforts, it's not the best in a school context, why would they think it? So it's really about where's the investment going to come from to take us forward.
So I think you're right. I think a lot of us will recognise what you've said there about resourcing and whatnot. I'm not saying that's not an issue, but I think for the purpose of today is about trying to define what we mean by computer science, our curriculum. Those are some of the challenges that might get in the way, but let's make sure we understand what it is we're trying to do, first of all. But I'm absolutely not ignoring what you're saying, but I think it's a discussion for later on in the process, if that makes sense.
I think it goes with the economic it's had a benefit to the economy. So if you're investing in investing in this development, then we need to do that.
And I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that statement. I think for the purpose of today about the what and the why, that's what we're concentrating on. That's kind of the how you talk about. If that makes sense, which there is a space for. Absolutely.
And obviously, like we said, we've got the Digital Critical Forensic Programme, which is not invested in by Scottish Government. It is a ScotlandIS initiative. It is volunteers from industry. So, you know, we all know the budgetary challenges that we have just now, but industry are trying to pull their weight and support our teachers and support our young people into convincing them or just showing them what a caring tech could look like and the vast opportunities that there is. So I think industry are doing all that they can. There will always be more that they can do, but the investment is, I'll leave that with Education Scotland.
It's about computer science in Scotland. But again, the first thing I asked me to talk about the data and the stats around about computer science. I'm really happy to do that. I think what I'm going to do is share some key facts and the insight point towards more details for you to have a look at. Because there's a few things I'd like to talk about the computer science curriculum I think we need to consider as we move forward in terms of kind of what do we need from a computer science curriculum. So first and foremost, I want to thank you for coming today. There's 104 people here, or there should be 104 people here today, from various sectors: schools, private schools, secondary schools, Scottish Government, further higher education, business. That's fantastic. We had about 157 people apply to come. We could fit everyone in, so that's great. There's so many people involved. 22 local authorities are represented, which is fantastic out of 32. But you might remember when you filled out the form, I asked you, how many years have you been teaching? I don't remember that thing. And I added up the 104 people on the guest list, and actually between us, there's over 1,200 years of teaching experience in this room when it comes to computer science. So if we can't fix this, then goodness knows who will. I'm not going to fix it today, but there's the experiences in the room to help try and answer some of these questions. So one of the things I want to start thinking about is today's about what and the why. So when you think about what is computer science, I began to look for definitions across the internet of what is computer science. And I shared some with you with some of the pre-reading. And I just wanted to share a few just now in case you hadn't seen it. I'll not read them out, I'll just put them on the screen. This is the Encyclopedia Britannica's definition of computer science. So if you have a read of that, you can figure out if you agree with it or not. So I sit and look at that and go, I kind of agree with that. I used to be a computer teacher, like a lot of you here, I used to teach computer. And I go, yeah, I think that's pretty good. And then when you go and have a look at other definitions, this is from code.org. Code.org is a way to find computer science. And because we're in Glasgow, I went to the Glasgow University webpage and I found out from their computer science area, this is a Glasgow University defined computer science. And then because we're in SQA, I went to the NAP5 arrangements for computer science, and I took their kind of rationale for computing and what people intend learners. This is what the SQA NAP5 rationale kind of says. I just replaced the word learners with people. So when we look at those things, they're all kind of the same, but different. So as we're going through today, I want you to try to think about what computer science means to you. If you had to go and define computer science and write it down, what does it mean to you? What types of things would you be saying? Because what we want to be able to do is that at the end of this process, we want a very clear definition of what is computer science, compared to what is digital skills, compared to what is digital literacy, all those things. What are the things that make computer science unique? How would we define that in Scotland? So you've got to write it down just now, but just keep that in the back of your mind. And again, on the online agenda, there's a section for pre-reading. I put a number of definitions from various parts of the web, which we can have a look at just for stirring some thoughts. But what we're here to do today is figure out, well, what we're going to do next. It's hard to look at the future And Karen's talked about, you know, the skills that industry require just now. But beyond that, it gets hard to look into the future. One way we can look at the future, of course, is to look back at the past. So I want to quickly take up some highlights from computer science over the years. And again, not in a huge amount of detail, but enough to kind of whet your appetites. So a couple of years ago, we did a survey of computer science in local authority secondary schools. There's 356 local authority secondary schools. 302 of those schools responded to our survey. One of the questions we asked was, what's in your current first and second year offering? What do you cover? And this word cloud is the cumulative answer of what's currently being delivered or at the point of 2022 in secondary school, first and second year DG. So you can see things there that says there's web design, development, computer programming, cyber, scraps. Those are the things that are currently being covered in S1 and S2. Now it's a couple of years old, and arguably some of your content might have changed by then, but I thought it'd be interesting to share that. Then the other thing I thought's interesting from this, and the pattern is still the same, is that there's been a lot of talk about, you know, the number of people studying computer science as a subject. But remember, computer science as a subject isn't just a single subject. There's all the NPAs that go with it at different levels. So here's the breakdown of computer science presentations by SCQF levels. This includes standard grade, into and higher, as well as all the national progression awards and things like cybersecurity and data science and the like. And what you'll see is this blue block here, this is the SCQF level 4 presentations. So the kids used to do general level computing, or in-one computing, or that type of level. And this orange block is the level 3, the foundation level computing, your NAT 3 kind of thing. This is where we seem to have lost our learners. So you can see the blue and the pink for kind of level 5, level 6. It's kind of been the same for a long time. I think we've lost learners. It's here. You begin to think to yourself, well, why is that? Why is that the case? And it's because our course structures have changed a lot over time. You know, computing's been in the curriculum since about 1985. Now, forgive me, XP people, if I've got some of my dates a little bit wrong. I tried to do it online. It's quite hard to find online the history of computing in Scotland, believe it or not. But I think I've kind of got it. So back in 1985, we had standard grade computing, and the dots refer to when it had refreshes, right? So they're coming in 2024, and sticking with the theme, if you travel back in time 30 years, because that's Back to the Future kind of thing. If Back to the Future was set just now, 2024, you go back 30 years. It's 1994. It's mental, isn't it? Anyway, so here we have in 1994, this is the offering of computing science, all right? Let's have a look at the content. So level 4, you had essentially a choice of general level computing, and this is the content for general level computing. For computer applications, computer systems, computer programming, project work, and flexibility. Many of you will have taught standard grade computing. Some of you might have even took standard grade computing. You see somebody's George with his hands up there. And then over time, like the standard grades started phasing out, and then higher still came, and that was essentially replaced by intermediate 1 computing. Intermediate 1 computing is computer application software, or processing, spreadsheets, databases, computer systems, what does RAM stand for? Then an optional unit, optional, of software development, or information systems, or the internet. It was then updated in 2004. And then you got applications, multimedia, so it makes pretty pictures, that's great. And the optional unit is computers and the internet, information and the internet. There's no coding in this, none. And people went, oh, that's a good way for me to cognitively engage with computing. There was no coding. And then, in 2013, we said, here's NAT 4 computing. If you talk NAT 4 computing, it's got software development, information system design and development, and an additional added value unit. We're saying, go learn these high-level languages. Go learn HTML. Go learn SQL. Go learn Python, compared to what they were doing before here. So arguably, learners at that level had historically been doing computing, but had not been engaging
with content that's similar to it is just now. If you look at later on at level 5, the level 5 qualifications, there's a bit more continuity between the old courses and the new courses. Now you've got application system programming, then you've got the N2, it's got systems and programming, then you've got the NAP 5, with their software design development and database design and web design. There's a bit more continuity between those different courses, and the same at level 6. We also had the course of higher information systems, again, which was hugely popular for a certain demographic of learners. And then we got rid of these higher information systems and higher computing, they kind of merged into what we know as computing science now. I think we lost something, so we could always kind of, at this point where we were opening up the curriculum a wee bit, because we had different pathways, you had your computing or your information systems, then the higher still program came to an end. We had national qualifications, which replaced that with your NAP 5s. But then we also then said, we've got the opportunity to expand the width of the computing experience. So while we might have lost information systems as a subject area, what we did gain is a pile of national progression awards at SGQF levels 4, 5, and 6. So just now, in schools can choose to deliver NAP 4, NAP 5, higher, advanced, and all those national qualifications, and or all of these different national progression awards at the same SGQF level. Now, arguably, some of these are more computing science than others. PC Passport, arguably not computer science. Data science, computer game design, cyber, arguably computer science. Okay, so I do understand that not all NPAs are equal in terms of computer science, but what it does mean though is that actually the uptake of computing over the last 5 years across all SCQF levels, NPAs, and national qualifications is actually increasing. So there are more schools offering wider pathways for learners because those things are more suitable for the learners in front of them. I think that's really interesting. But however, this is the thing you've got to really pay attention to, but this is a really good news story, but there are challenges to deliver it with no kind of timetabling and teachers. But there's not only things like that. The age at which pupils are being presented for qualifications is quite interesting. I only found this out the other day. I took the National 5 results the past couple of years and then grouped them by success of year of presentation. So in NAP 5, you can do it in S4, S5, S6 in school. This is the success rate of pupils doing NAP 5 computer. So the light blue one is the A-C awards, and the dark blue is the D to No awards, kind of number of kids. And you'll see that kids in S4 tend to do pretty successfully in their NAP 5 presentation. However, kids who take NAP 5 in S5 or S6 don't tend to do particularly well. I don't know why that is. That's a question we should be asking ourselves. Why are these pupils not succeeding? And again, when you look at the breakdown of A, B's, and C's down the bottom, you see the same type of thing. With the S5s, overwhelmingly, if you're in S5 and do NAP 5 computing, you're going to get a D or a No award. I don't know why that is. What a minute ago. So as we think about the future, the past tells us there are lots of pathways through computing, and there are probably better pathways than others that kind of match the needs of our learners. So as we begin to start thinking about what should new computing curriculum look like, we need to think about what Karen talked about skills. The other thing that I want to share with you is this, if you've seen this, the McKinsey Tech Outlook Trends. This was posted this year, and it's the top 15 emerging technologies where jobs are happening just now across the world. Next generation software development, applied AI, climate technologies, digital trust and security, cloud and edge computing, future of engineering. These are the current trending things in industry in terms of tech skills. Now, when you look at where they're sitting on the adoption rate by organisations, number 1 being not quite adopted and scaled, number 5 being fully adopted and scaled, you'll see there's a whole pile of these that are down here, 1 and 2, So things like climate technologies, future of mobility, future of robotics, these things are currently being investigated and seen as a big hitter for industry. Should our curriculum not be focusing towards these types of things? If we know these are coming, should our curriculum be looking at that? So, well, last thing, is that when we start thinking about this curriculum, we know what's happened in the past, kind of got some kind of idea what's happening in the future. What does that mean for our curriculum content? And we've been looking a lot about the work of Piaget, who talks about the stages of cognitive development. And this is about how, at what age and stage are pupils able to process information. And Piaget talks about having 4 stages. Okay, these stages, the birth to 2, 2 to 7, 7 to 11, and 12 and up. Now, arguably, we work in that last 3 areas, those last 3 things. I just want to show you what he says about the cognitive ability of learners at this stage. So, birth to 2. This is kind of what they're doing. They're looking and listening, they're grabbing, they realise they're a different being, they're learning about being themselves. And that's wonderful, lovely. And I miss when my child was 2, he's now 13, and he's a pain in the neck, but he was much nicer when he was 2. Anyway, but from the ages 2 to 7, sort of primary school people's early years, this is what they can do cognitively. They can begin to think symbolically, learn to use words and pictures to represent objects. They struggle to see things from other people's perspectives, and they're getting better with language and thinking, but still tend to think in very concrete terms. So what does that look like in a computer science curriculum for kids at that age? So what are concrete materials that teach some of these concepts? And I think that's really important. And as we move through, the ages 7 to 11, this is when they begin to think logically about concrete events, about real things. So this idea of abstract things, they're not particularly able to process particularly well. So what does that mean for our curriculum for computer science? Then, only when they get to about the age of 12, they begin to think abstractly and begin to reason about hypothetical problems. So at that age is when the cognitive development of these young people is able to deal with these types of problems. Now, what does that mean for the computer science curriculum? And I was speaking to Ilona Coates, who gives away by Ilona. Ilona works in the maths team at Education Scotland. They're talking about the variables. And I said, why would you teach variables to your kids with 2x plus y equals this, whatever? And Ilona said, second level. What age group would that be?
5 to 7, but even then it would be sitting well within the mathematical ideas that they know already, doubling, halving, adding, subtracting, simple quantities, that kind of thing. But it's the idea of an unknown number.
An unknown number. So that's the thing about computer science. We often talk about this, is that when you think about maths, there are similarities to maths and computing. So should we not be speaking to the maths team about how we can put some of our ideas for computer science and be embedded within the maths? How can maths influence computing? Again, both Quentin and I would have mentioned to me previously about the pupils' ability with their spatial maths and the effect it can have on them being able to think computationally. So if the maths curriculum is doing more spatial maths, will that have an impact on how well our learners learn? All these are provocations and questions that I don't know the answer for, but there's 1,200 years of experience in this room, so surely we can figure out something. So my last statement is this. If our ecosystem is a tree, and the roots of the tree are the kind of kids learning and exploring and tinkering, and then our branches are our senior phase courses and our further and higher education courses, and the leaves are the destinations. What does this trunk look like? What's this BGE that allows learners to be successful, to go off and study one of 14 different pathways to end up in one of these industries that are developing just now? What do we need? How to make that strong? How to make the trunk strong? That's my provocation for you when it comes to computing. And I'm going to start talking. Any questions? Hello.
Everyone. I'm sorry to disrupt your networking because I know how important networking is, especially at events like this. And it feels like I've kind of disturbed that natural networking that will happen. It happened over lunch. basically, I was asked to deliver a kind of overview of computing and further education to give you a flavour of an insight into what we do and what computing is like from a computing perspective. Also, to give you a kind of insight into what happens to the pupils that don't get 4 or 5 hires. What happens if they get 1 hire? What happens if they only get in that 5? Where do they go? Generally, if they want to continue their educational journey, they come to us. So it's really just a kind of insight into what they do when they leave you and they come to us. What things make them successful learners when they come to us, and just to give you a kind of flavour and an insight into it. So the current state of further education in Scotland, probably you won't be surprised to hear it's the biggest challenge probably is the funding challenge at the moment. Funding for FE colleges has been cut 17% in real terms since 21-22. There's a backdrop of wage rises that have just gone through, which has further kind of increased that challenge in terms of funding as well. You might think this might kind of, these two things don't really correlate, but the enrolment, it's certainly in computing subjects. I was having a look back at all of our figures, West College Scotland, and we are back to pre-COVID levels of enrolment. We haven't really lost any numbers. All our numbers in computer courses are all on the up, and they look to be continuing to increase, which again, looking at some of the figures, it's quite surprising. So the most popular courses for us, the ones that are on a kind of upward trajectory at the moment, are cybersecurity, games development, software development. There are other courses where data science, data, that kind of area where we've tried to recruit, just hasn't happened. There's just been no uptake for that. Could be the name. There's a lot in the name of a course and how attractive that course becomes simply because of its name. Does it really reflect the content that's there? So there's maybe a lot around that. But that's our 3 most popular courses: cybersecurity, games development, and software development, which has seen a resurgence in the last few years. So what types of learners do we typically see? Predominantly 2 types, to be honest. We tend to either have 16 to 18-year-old school leaver type students, or we've got adult returners who are looking to move out the job they're in, reskill, retrain, and move up. We also find that, I'll cover this later, but we tend to find that they are predominantly male. Educational backgrounds are really, really mixed. They may have non-traditional educational backgrounds. They may or may not hold SQA qualifications. Again, depending on the course they're coming into or the age that they are when they come to us. For example, if we've got mature students, we tend not to weigh as much on their educational ability, but we look at their kind of their life skills and the skills they picked up as they've gone along on a case-by-case basis. So what do they do when they are with us? I'm not sure it was after that slide. Basically, what happens, there are a number of pathways. So we take people on from access level, NQ level, and that can be a kind of hop-on point for them. They can then travel through the NQ to HNC to HND, and then usually into university. That's normally the kind of direction of travel. And it's usually into year 3 at university as well, just due to the articulation routes that we've got. So a hop-on point for us would be someone leaving school, maybe with a few NAT5s, they would come on to our NQ programme. The NQ programme, if they're successful, will lead on to the HNC programme in that area. And then obviously HNC will lead to the HND, then leading to year 3. university. And usually that's the route that most people take. Wherever they hop on, if they hop on to our NQ programme, they will usually stay all the way through HNC, HND, and then on to university. If they hop on at HNC, again, they usually stay with us, complete their HND, and then move into university. That's not the only route, it's probably the most popular route, but when they leave us, they either leave from HND usually directly into employment. And we've seen that increasing over the last few years as companies are more desperate for people or desperate to close that skills gap. We find that more people are coming from an HND and are going directly into employment. However, the articulation route, usually on a 2+2 model, so they'll do HNC, HND with us, move to university and do 2 years of university to get an honours degree. It's probably our most popular route. We've had people who have gone on to self-employment or they've gone into freelancing. And some of the stats, 26% of degree entrants have come from FE, so over a quarter have actually come from the FE sector. And interestingly, 42% of entrants who go into university from the most deprived areas have come through FE first and haven't gone directly to HE. So what do we see as attributes for success? What do students that succeed on our courses tend to have? And there's basically 3 main things. They tend to have those technical skills, so that logical thinking, that problem solving type of mind. Also, they need to have, or they tend to have, the ones that are successful, have got some of the softer skills as well. The collaborative, the critical thinking, the communication skills, being able to work in a team, learning to adapt to new technologies, methodologies. I think that most importantly, it's that mindset, it's the kind of the perseverance, the work ethic, the dedication that is probably one of the major factors that we see as an attribute for success. And I always think about it as the success is really made up of 3 things. It's the passion for the subject, it's the persistence and them wanting to make sure that they get through it, and it's practice. It doesn't come naturally to some students, but by practicing it does. So that's what we see as, for us, students that succeed tend to have a mix of those 3 things. So I'll kind of quickly cover what we offer in FE. Now this is from my viewpoint at West College Scotland. I know that a lot of colleges around the country will have a similar type offering, no matter where you are. So we've got what we call probably the kind of entry-level courses. So we've got an access course that allows access onto that kind of bottom rung, if you like. And the bottom rung would be the NQ courses. Now we've moved away from having an NC, a national certificate, just because of the kind of inflexibility that it's got. So we've got a national qualification, and usually what these are built around are built around national progression awards. So we'll have a number of national progression awards put together inside our NQ computer courses, and those make up the kind of majority of the units that are inside those courses. We've got some January type courses aimed at Christmas leavers or maybe people who have maybe not succeeded at other courses or they're looking for a change. And these are usually type of fast track courses that will get them into an HNC. So they'll start with us in January, go through a series of NQ type units, maybe a few PDAs, and subject to the usual references and so on, they will be able to then continue on to our HNC. So our HNC basically got 2 kind of streams. We've got our HNC computing, which runs into software development, networking, and the sort of cyber security areas. And we've also got the games development as well. So really there's kind of two main tracks there. When we deliver the HNCs and HNDs, where possible, we like to include vendor-specific qualifications. So the Cisco, Oracle, Microsoft, etc. There are units that have been written that kind of mirror these qualifications, but obviously if they can get the vendor certification as well as their SQA certification, then it stands on a greater step when it comes to employment. We've also got vocational training. We've got modern apprenticeships that are with us, and usually through that IT and telecoms modern apprenticeship, which is now coming to an end, so we'll be looking at some of the other cloud type modern apprenticeships. And we still have got school-college partnerships. It was interesting when Brian was talking about the uptake of NPAs in schools. That does sync with what we're finding. Usually our school-college partnerships are us delivering NPAs in college, because schools may not have the equipment, they may not have the expertise in the department, they may not have a computer department. So we deliver the NPAs, but we're finding that the demand for them is reducing because schools are able to now deliver these themselves. We are finding that we've got half the amount of courses that we had pre-COVID. So those numbers that are coming to us with a school-college partnership are dropping. So just a little bit around the course content and structure. All of our courses are SQA devised. Everything that we do, with the exception of commercial courses, are courses that are SQA devised. So they're based on the SQA group award specification for that particular qualification. And what we find is we've got a number of core or mandatory units that we have to deliver. There'll be a number of optional units. And what the number of optional units allows us to do is to take a course, and if it's not working, or we're finding that that particular subject isn't a good fit, we can change out some units and put new units into the framework. It also means that if new units are written and they get added to the framework, we can then offer them. So it allows us to sort of keep up a little bit quicker, a little bit more incrementally than we would if we were having to wait the 5 or however many years it is, supposed to be 5, for a new refresh of an HNC, HND. If the slides have been shared, I have included a number of links to the frameworks that we offer to allow you to see what is in there. Our assessment methods, probably nothing in here that would be too different to what happens in schools in terms of your NPA type assessments. We've got practical assessments, we've got project work, lab exercise, the usual kind of things. Only thing I would mention is some of our HNC courses have a final exam, which is a 3-hour exam. It's like sitting higher, they're in there, the 3 hours, it's a written paper, that is then marked, and that allows them to be given a grade. So it's called a graded unit. So that is in all of the courses except the games development. And the games development, their HNC here has got a team working, or a team project, which is then graded. And they're graded on how they work together as a team. And you can imagine the challenges that presents. In the HND here, they've got graded exams, or they've got graded projects, I should say. And that's usually quite a large piece of work that's done probably throughout their HND year. Again, that's given a grade. When they go to university, usually they will be accepted based on the grades from their HNC year and the grades from their HND year. So they might have to get an AB or 2 A's, depending on the course and depending on the level or the year of entry that they wish to go into. But nothing really inside the assessment methods is terribly probably the exception of the modern apprenticeship. It's slightly different. So, moving on to the last slide, I guess the challenges that we are finding is, and that was echoed by what Karen said at the beginning, it's the skills gap. How do we close that skills gap? How do we make sure that what we are delivering is what is needed for industry and it's what industry want? So that's a challenge because obviously we are limited to our SQA group award specification. So we are very limited in what we can offer. You can obviously tweak things, you can add subjects in, but you have to be very, very careful in what we deliver because we've only got a set time to deliver our qualification. One of the challenges is gender imbalance and diversity. I had a look last night at our numbers, 87% male, 13% female, which is probably normal. That's probably what it is across all college courses. Funnily enough, I was looking at the staff breakdown, and our staff breakdown is exactly 50-50. So we've got positive role models there. It's a bigger issue than just saying that's what we need to tackle. There's lots of things around that. Funding is obviously something that is top of probably most people's agenda. How do we keep doing what we do? How can we make sure that what we're delivering is what is needed in industry against a backdrop of funding cuts and making efficiencies and trying to deliver more for less? It's a challenge. And then, of course, we've got the socio-economic barriers. West College Scotland has got campuses in Paisley, Clydebank and Greenock, with some of the biggest or largest areas of deprivation in the country. And how do we make sure that we are reaching out to people in those areas and taking them through and being successful? So that's a challenge in itself. And that's me.
Okay. Right. So my name is Sue Sentence. I am not living in Scotland. I've come all the way from England, and always very happy to come up here, trying to sort of scrape up my Scottishness. I did do hires in Aberdeen and went to Edinburgh University, and my son was born in Glasgow, so I love coming back here. I've sort of got a bit off piste. Partly I didn't get the memo about pedagogy, so apologies that's on your. But pedagogy is, it says on I'm supposed to be talking about, is a bit about the how. But as we're talking about the why, I really am focusing on why should we teach computing science in school. We've heard a lot so far about what I'd call the workforce rationale, the economic argument. Somebody says, because we need to get people into jobs, because there is a skills, because there are vacancies, we need to fill them. But let's think about from the youngest children, why should they be learning computer science? The whole picture. So we'll start off, and I apologise also that this is not a very concrete talk. So you've heard lots of actual content about the Scottish curriculum, but I'm just going to look a bit more broadly. So we've been doing a little bit of research about the lenses that people use to look at computing science, and these illustrate 4 ways that you might think it's really important to teach computing science. And I would like you to read those and decide on which of those 4, I'll read them out for people who are stuck behind screens and things, which of those 4 might be the thing that you would, if someone twisted your arm, that you would hang your hat on. So, and I know I've sat over there, you can't see the person sitting here. So the primary goal of computer science education should be to enable students to use computational tools for scientific inquiry. Or should computing science education focus on creativity, collaboration, real-world problem solving? Or should computing science be taught as a discipline that emphasizes problem solving and algorithmic techniques? Or should computer science really emphasize the social and ethical implications of technology and give students being responsible practitioners? So quickly turn to the person next to you. I don't want to start a discussion because I know the time is ticking. you're only allowed to say one letter. But turn to the person next to you and say either A, B, C, or D in the next 10 seconds. I try and hear what the loudest letter is. Okay, that's long enough to say one letter. How many people had a different letter to the person next to them? Okay, so that illustrates my point. Actually, we look at this from different perspectives, and we have some of a bit what we call co-clash, because we are both arguing something in the curriculum. It's because we have different perspectives. I'm going to go right back to, well, it's not very far back, but I don't know how many of you know about Gert Jester, because he wrote this when he was in Stirling, originally Dutch, and then they went moved to Edinburgh. But this Gert Jester talks about three kinds of dimensions of why we should actually have education at all. So one is qualification, and that's what we talk about a lot. I tell you, in England, we get hung up on qualification. You need to know this, and this, and this, and this, so that you can do something. But there's other reasons for education. Socialisation means that when you go to school, when you're in education, you are learning to become a member of that society and take the values of that society. You're conforming to the orders. And then the subjectification means actually also you're developing your own thinking, your independent thinking, your autonomy. And Jester talks about those two things as being opposites, socialisation, subjectification, but also that we should have all of these in our curriculum design. And he uses two examples: citizenship education and maths education. And I won't go through this in any great detail, and you can have my slides. But we talk about, we know what we need to know about maths, but do we know what's the norm of maths being so important? And what's the individual aspects of learning maths? What do you get out? How does that increase your autonomy and independent thinking? So why do we need to think about the purpose of education? If I go to another researcher, Van den Akker, who writes about curriculum, it's because he has this kind of spider web, which I really love, and anything to take away, I think this is really nice. At the centre, when we're designing a curriculum, at the centre of it is, why are we learning? Well, once you know why you're learning, whether it's A, B, C, or D, or some combination, then the rest of it kind of falls out of it. When you know why you're actually learning computing science, you then have content, the kind of the approach you have to if you're looking at if you're really thinking about subjectification, you want to have discussion and develop critical thinking. The activities that you have fall out of that that sort of spider web. So I would say that's I really pleased to come to this kind of event when you're actually focusing on why learn computing science in the first place. So I recommend thinking about this. Another piece of work that I've been involved in, which is my last thing I wanted to share with you, is around going back to the 4 questions I had at the beginning. So we've done a very large literature review looking at lots of curriculum that have been written around in the literature, trying to unpick this question of why are people choosing to teach computing science in this particular way in all over the world. And I looked at lots of international curricula as part of my job. And we came up with these 4 traditions, 4 perspectives on teaching computing science that were represented in the questions I got you to think about in the first. And these are the algorithmic tradition. So the algorithmic tradition, you're focusing on, without my glasses, I have to walk over here. You're really focusing on programming, algorithms, the maths, what I call the maths side. We do a lot of that. And or the scientific tradition, which is more about modelling, simulation, using data, using computing in other subjects. Then there's the design and making tradition, which is more about building things and being creative and collaborating and those sort of things. And then there's the societal tradition of the reason is because technology impacts society, society impacts technology, and we really need our young people to be responsible practitioners to actually think about, sort of think about society, and we need them to leave school being able to make good decisions. So, but when I got you to say one letter to each other, these are represented these 4 areas. I don't expect you to come from one particular. You should have found that quite difficult. I imagine that you aligned to more than one of those statements. Has anyone done this discovery colour personality test, where you end up with 4 plastic Lego blocks that tell you when you're a leader or creator or something? Anyway, I have mine at home. They sit on my desk. They kind of remind me who I am. But basically, it's this idea that you aren't just one thing. You are a combination of things, but they might have more priority in the way you see the world. So you may be somebody that is has this combination. You may at the top, you may believe in algorithmic lens, or you might have design making or societal at the top of yours. So what we want to do, there's a paper coming out on this at the end of the year. What we want to do is to get people to reflect on and be able to say, actually, this is me, this is how I think about computing science. Then they can have conversations with other people, and that influences what you might. That sits then at the middle of your spider web. So then you think about what you might learn. I don't have time for really going into this, and it's far too much text for one slide. Apologies, but this gives you some more statements that align to the different traditions of that underpin computing science. I've just picked 1 or 2. So learning to program is essential because it teaches the fundamental principles of computation. If you really hang on that, you might be algorithmic. If you think computing education is data collection, analysis, and those are things, you might be scientific. And then this critical side for being a sort of societal perspective. So that's really what I wanted to bring to you, was this kind of the Esther idea, the qualification, socialising, thinking about that level of purpose, the spider web, and then these 4 traditions. And Kirsty talked about provocation. It's just about giving you some things to think about. Before I go, I thought you might want to know what I think about England. We are in the middle of a curriculum review. England does have a very algorithmic perspective, obsessed with learning to. Do you have to learn the binary search algorithm?
We've got standard algorithms that we have to learn.
This is the aims of our national curriculum. It's pretty algorithmic. It's also the technology side and the societal side is taught as if it's separate subjects altogether, which is quite irritating in my view. But we are undergoing a review. I have great hopes for the curriculum review in England. This tells you there are other frameworks, taxonomies of computing, and this is us. I haven't got Scotland here. This is the US framework. This is the EU framework, and kind of shows sort of a bit of the what kind of things to different frameworks for computing science focus on. As I said, I think we are definitely coming from the Esther and the qualification level, and we focus quite a lot on algorithms, not at all on the scientific tradition in England. So that's kind of the way that I analyse. That's 12 minutes.
That's lovely, thank you.
If I speak loudly, can you all hear me?
I've got a fun one now. That's exciting.
Oh, it could be clippy on. Or I could just speak like this. Would this be okay?
No. Everybody else.
Sorry, I've got to be recorded. Okay, awesome.
You can clip that onto your pocket. You can put it on.
Okay.
So I feel like it's a bit technician. There you go.
Oops. Can I just get in?
Your pocket. There you go.
Okay, well, I won't shout quite so loudly then. Okay, so STACS Viewpoint, I'm sure you all know Brendan and Tony, they're the ones who do all the work, but they put me up here just to speak. So I shall do my best to represent their fantastic work. So STACS, I hope you all know, a teacher association in birthing, as it were, funded by Scottish Government. It's a very exciting project by teachers for teachers, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we go. I'm not exactly going to do this title about what research tells us. I'll tell you why in a second. And where are we? I've put going in brackets. It's like, where are we? And that's sort of based on the work that Brendan and Tony have been doing to really highlight what's been. I don't know why it's doing that. Something's very odd's going on. Hang on. Now that's a loss.
Increase your digital health skills.
Yeah, well, something's definitely weird is going on. Oh, there we go. Okay, so the reason I'm not going to do a big load of research from around the world is just because education is so situated. You know, it's different in every different place, and really, what STACS has been doing is working to understand a bit better what is going on across the country. Whilst it is also, I mean, its central goal is to develop a community of practice amongst all teachers. Yeah, as you know, you're all very spread out in different places. There might be one of you or two of you. Occasionally, there's an oasis of 4 or 5 in one school. But it's hard to all communicate and really build the subject when we're so separated. And so a real STACS goal is to bring everybody together. And there's been a lot of work going on really towards that idea. Tony particularly has been leading the creation of materials, so both primary and secondary BGE materials, as well as some physical computing materials, in an effort to get a baseline. And you know, in all the time I've worked in Scottish education, schools education, teachers have said, you know, it's really valuable to have some kind of baseline, and that was a real miss a while back. There's been an upskilling programme that some of you I know have been involved in. I don't know if all of you have. And that's been an interesting exercise because it's been professional development as much for the people leading it as it has been for the people taking it. And so we're kind of bringing forward the entire teacher body, just sort of increasing skills doing that. There's been a number of half or full days with CS teacher groups, but by local authorities. So I know that Brendan went up to visit Charlie and the Aberdeen group up there. And those have been really, really useful exercises in kind of understanding what's going on more deeply. There have been a number of online and in-person events, and we're sort of building an online network bit by bit as we speak. So lots happening there. Well, what have we learned? We've certainly got heightened aware of a bunch of issues that have been talked about a lot, not so much today, but I'll just mention them because I don't want them to come up because they're not the purpose of today, but prevailing attitudes towards computer science among local authorities and head teachers, class sizes, class time in BGE, equipment, DPIAs. These are all things you know about: teacher, community time, and leadership. So that's not about the curriculum, but they're all really important things. So we won't talk about them today, but just to say, didn't realise that was on a separate piece, we are working with Scottish Government to actually get better communication with local authorities and head teachers so that we can better understand one another, rather than just saying, oh, it's a local authority, or oh, it's my head teacher, or whatever. Can we actually improve that connection? Right. So there's work on all of that. Anyway, what I want to talk about in terms of the curriculum started off with the upskilling programme, which was kind of led by Brendan and Tony, clearly. And the way that worked was to use the annual SQA reports to kind of drive what the upskilling was. And there are kind of 2 ways we could respond to those reports. One is it's SQA saying that this is what they don't do very well at in exams. If they just did this a little bit slightly differently, that would fix things. So it's sort of improving their exam technique. But the other way of using it is to have a real discussion around issues that come up again and again and again, year after year. Oh, the pupils are not very good at this. So why haven't we fixed that? What's going on? What's happening underneath that's causing that? So that was a real starting point, using that kind of B part. And so we got quite experienced teachers, starting off with very much Brendan and Morag Shaw, looking at that. And then as we've gone on, we've drawn in more teachers as tutors, and they've started to take a lead. And this has all been about experienced teachers reflecting on their knowledge and practice, and then engaging in discussion with others around that. So it's been upskilling for the tutors, but also for the attendees. It's in passing, or a part of it has been very much to explore what's going on, as a form of where are we. That's one of the big questions for date. Where are we right now? And I think that has shed light on clear curriculum issues. And one of the aspects that came out of that for us was we said, well, look, we kind of need to have a more clear body of knowledge for the subject. At the moment, it's kind of getting defined by the SQA qualifications or by past papers. And the SQA qualifications are just a tiny little set of bullet points, really. What is the subject that we want to teach? And it needs to kind of be clearer so that all of us can kind of have a good understanding of what that is. So that's a kind of like a where are we problem. We kind of need a body of knowledge, and that desire for a body of knowledge combined in with Mark Logan speaking to the Education Committee in May or thereabouts, and in some ways that's also sparked off this pilot review of computer science when we started talking to Education Scotland about that. So some other observations about where are we. So we've got access to SQA data, and and also discussions with teachers. We see a very, very contrasting picture. It's not all the same. Some schools do really well with exactly what we've got, and others, not so much. It's clear that girls can succeed because in some schools they're doing brilliantly and the gender balance is good. Success does not seem to be aligned to rich or poor areas. So, this is where we are. What's going on? This lack of consistency. But one of the important things is what we have right now can be made to work. So how can we do that? What's going on there? I think the point I'm trying to make is, we do not need to throw everything out in this curriculum. I mean, we might do. That might be what we choose, but we might not need to. It doesn't need to be a huge, enormous change, perhaps. This came from the Scottish Tech Ecosystem Review. Put simply, the curriculum is boring for a subject that is inherently magical. Isn't that lovely? I mean, why do we all teach this subject? Because we kind of know it's got some kind of magic, the ability to build almost anything. This is disappointing and something is wrong. So that's also, a perspective on where we are. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. So we've got lots of where are we's. So there's a jigsaw analogy in here that I can't remember if it was Brendan or Morag who came up with it or whether they collectively did it, but I rather like it. So if you think about a jigsaw, you get on and be successful in building that whole jigsaw puzzle when you've got all the pieces and you've got the picture on the front of the box. And if you've got the box picture and you've got all the pieces, you're kind of okay. So where might we be in comparison with that? Well, we've kind of got a pile of pieces. That's all the little pieces of our curriculum, whether it's BGE or the national qualifications or maybe the MPAs as well. There's lots and lots of little pieces. We suspect from the state of what's going on, where are we? We suspect some of the pieces might be missing. And in light with what what you were saying, Brian, and what Sue was saying, what's our big picture? We don't have the box front big picture. So, we end up teaching all these pieces, but towards what end? So, so I think these are really important questions for us to consider. What is the big picture, and what are the missing pieces? If there's some, because you can only see the missing pieces if you put together everything you've got, and then you can see where the gaps are, and you've got the picture on the front of the box, and you can kind of see what should be on those missing pieces. So can we work out what the big picture is, and then from that work out the missing pieces? So big picture thing, one of the questions that you've got in the blurb later on is why CS? Well, the important question there to follow up from Sue is, well, what is CS? What do we take it to be? And from both of you, so all three of us seem to be saying the same thing. My God, we've really got to work out for Scotland what we think CS is. Some suggestions on that and some sort of whys. Well, we're in technologies. I mean, I would put that therefore in your making box, but I think we've got some of the algorithmic thing in there as well. But I think because we're in technologies, we're really, with woodwork and needlework and stuff, we're about making things. And I think that comes through strongly. Do we want to change that? I don't know, there's a question, but that's kind of where we are. Another question we're asked is, how do we contribute to the 4 CFE capacities? I think as part of technologies, we're well placed there. And a question I have anyway, and I've been mulling over, can we really imagine our children not going out with some understanding of artificial intelligence and machine learning? I was talking to Richard earlier, and he said, well, my God, most people in universities don't really know what that is. But surely we can teach them something so they've got a sense of it in the same way that when you have some idea of the model underneath Word, you have a better understanding of how Word works and how you can use it. Can we not have some kind of understanding under the artificial intelligence and ChatGPT and all of that so that they're better prompt engineers? Anyway, so I think there's something for us to think about there. What do we have to say about the pieces? Okay, so this piece was something that we sort of think about the big picture. But what about the pieces? I don't know. I think they're pretty good. And you've all spent years coming to terms with all of those pieces. But there's a problem because they're not connected to a big picture. In the way that the box front is obviously connected to the jigsaw pieces, because you can see how they're related. Because these aren't related, they're not necessarily taught in an integrated way. Perhaps we're not making the best use of all those pieces to really show the developmental sequence that could be happening, or to show that, to deepen the learning when things are at the same level are kind of the same. I think I've just said what I was going to say. So there's a kind of a vertical integration not necessarily going on because the BGE is not well connected to the national qualifications. We've talked about that. The primary BGE is not effectively connected to secondary BGE. These are all things that would happen in other subjects. And the express train of National 5 higher and advanced higher kind of drains time for deep skills development. I mean, imagine how wonderful it would be if we followed what Hayward suggested and we didn't have exams in National 5 for pupils who were going to go on to higher. How brilliant would that be? You'd have the whole of the rest of National 5 time just to practice your problem solving and get better at stuff and so on. So there's something really interesting that could happen. Sorry, we're not meant to be talking solutions. It's just the problems. Horizontally, similarly, we've got these silos that the national qualifications have fallen into. The software development, database development, and web. And there are commonalities across these things. And if we made it more obvious how we could connect across, we could deepen learning significantly. And so with a combination of vertical and horizontal, thinking about the integration in those two, my God, we could have a hell of a subject, even with just what we've got right now, but just lining it all up better. So we haven't really got the guidance on how to do that. We were again talking about the BGE, which various of us in the room were quite involved in creating that BGE structure, but we never really managed to explain it properly. And to explain what the point of those three organisers is, and to show how it works. And I have actually now done that with a student in Saudi Arabia, and the primary teachers just picked it up like that. It was just so easy; they could see what the whole point of it was. So there's a missing piece for us there. Okay, two missing pieces then that we were thinking about. The National 5 and the high. You remember the tech ecosystem review? It says the subject is boring, and particularly they highlighted National 5. And you get to National 5 and higher, and it's all potted problems given by us or by SQA. Where's the excitement of creating your own thing? You have that before National 5. You have it in advanced higher. So maybe that's really something we should work on bringing back. And consistent curriculum specification all the way to 18. So I know that's the goal of this thing, isn't it? Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so I don't really need to talk more about that. Good, right. So that's all I want to say. This is Brendan. He took that big poster we created and turned it into a jigsaw puzzle. We've got loads of pieces. Some of them may be missing. We haven't got a big picture, but we've got a reasonable set of pieces. Some people can make the pieces we've got work. We seem to be missing a body of knowledge. We seem to be missing guidance on vertical and horizontal integration, even though I gather teachers don't want guidance. So that's interesting. I mean, that's what you were saying from the earlier ones. So not sure about that. Missing real-world problem solving in those crucial points where we'll be able to take people to try and